Okay, we're back working on the Yugo, and in this video, it's gonna run before we're done. So stay tuned. So we've got a couple of totes full of parts, axles, plastic, air breathers, hoses, a lot of vacuum lines, stuff like that in here, headlights. And right now, we're actually just getting ready to pull the wheels off so we can get the axles stuffed into place. I have been working away at this morning for, about an hour and a half or so, just getting some of the wiring and some of the plumbing hooked up. Let's show you how far we've made it so far. So we've been working away at some of the plumbing, electrical, all that stuff. So we've got all of our electrical clips back into place, our wiring run, our coil is mounted. We've got our heater hose connected to the water pump and into the heater core. And then the other one, we had to put a little T. If you remember when I took this apart, I cut it. So we put a little coupler in there. And our fuel lines, I'm not sure which one's which. There's a small one and a bigger one. One's return and one is supply. Same thing on the carburetor. We've got a supply and a return. And I can't remember which one's which. Based on the way the supply line comes up off of the water pump, it doesn't want to reach this side very easily. So I put it here, and I've got a message into my buddy Alan over at Compass Garage. He is the Yugo guy. And to find out if he can tell me which one is supply for sure. I can figure it out when it comes time to start it, if we're getting fuel or if we're not. We're swapping, no big deal. But it'd be nice to do it now before I get everything in the way. So we've got our oil pressure, our engine coolant temp. I'm not sure what this thing, I think this is electronic ignition. I can't remember. But anyways, we're pretty much done with most of the wiring except for headlights and stuff like that, because once we get everything back in, the headlights and grille will be the last thing we do. I've got my new clutch cable that I found in the trunk of this car installed, and this is where the brake booster mounts. And we are waiting on a brake booster for this car. This is the brake booster that came out of it. And as you can tell, it's got like a little barbed fitting on both ends. While on this one here, it's broke. So once again, I reached out to Alan. He's got one. He has sent it to me. It's on its way. And we'll be able to get that in. We don't need brakes to get this thing to run. So we'll kind of bypass that for the time being. And as I mentioned, we are about to get this wheel off and probably the lower ball joint out so that we can kind of swing this out of the way, get the axle stuffed in there, and it's going to be a little bit tricky. So we'll start with the driver's side, we'll go to the passenger side after, get the shifter hooked up, and get that lower engine mount put into place so that everything isn't rocking back and forth in there. Once we've got that done and get the fuel line thing straightened out, we should be able to drop a battery in this thing and start cranking on it, hopefully. So I'm going to get this wheel off and start working on the axles. Okay, driver's side axle is in, as well as the passenger side. Now we can hook up the brake hydraulic lines, get them over to the booster, which means we got to get the booster installed. I guess I said booster, I meant master, but I mean, you guys know what I mean. So we'll get this over here. Then we can come under here and get our brake pedal and our clutch pedal hooked back up. And then we'll work away at the cooling system with the fan and the hoses. And I think as long as we've got a battery and all of our connections are plugged in properly, we should be okay to crank this thing over and hopefully get it started. Oh, I guess exhaust. Yeah, we'll figure out something there too. One step at a time, guys. I guess we'll just keep on keeping on, and we'll update you in a few minutes. So I decided to stop and have a quick break. We're making some progress, and things are starting to come together. Let me show you where we are as of right now. So we've got our brake lines hooked up here, and yes, we're gonna have to probably bleed that master again because obviously there's no reservoir. This is a reservoir here. As you can see on the bottom there, the tips broke off. We've got that dug out, but the lines for the brakes are hooked up, not just here, but at the brake hose as well. We got our reservoir here for the engine coolant, a washer reservoir. Everything's all hooked up. The overflow tube is coming up here to the cap. The fan is in, hoses are on. The thermostat for the fan is not plugged in yet. I think this is the horn. Pretty sure that's the horn. And even though I've got this labeled rad fan, there's 2 lines. So I've got to find the other one for it somewhere. And this actually might be it, to tag that. So the cooling system is plumbed. We did figure out which of our fuel lines, the 2 fuel lines down there, was which. And what I did at the recommendation of Alan was take air, compressed air, and push air through the gas tank. See which line pushes fuel. So we did that, and the bottom one was the one that pushed fuel. So that runs down to the pump, comes back up, and we've got that fed to this front line. And the reason why I did that was because, well, I questioned it for starters. I do remember when I first got the car, that fitting right there was leaking. So that was the, that tells me that's the pressure. And this is the return. So the return is just looped back and goes into the firewall. Got a couple things to look up. We've got our coil, and we've got some wires here for the coil. Obviously positive and negative, and I've got to look up in the book to see which one is which. I do not know what this blue wire is for. No idea. But I've got this black box here that I took off, and it used to sit right there, and it's got a plug-in right there that I think is supposed to go to that. And I've got that labeled as choke for some reason. So we may end up having to put that. There is a spot there for a vacuum line. Air box. We've got the air intake. A lot of guys think when they see these cars, because the hood has this little scoop on it, they think that that's some sort of ram air. It is not. It is the source of air for your cabin. So air gets sucked in here, and you've got a couple controls here. So one is fresh air. There's another one, a cable inside that switches as, I think, maybe recirculate. I'm not sure, but anyways, I got both of those hooked up. So other than the choke and the brakes, I think we're ready to put, oh, and the fan. We got to figure that out too. I got to go do some research. So I can fill this thing up full of antifreeze, which is what I'm going to do next. And the brakes is the only thing that we can't finish today, but I think we can get the car started. So what we're going to do is fill it up full of antifreeze. We are going to see if we can grab the battery, get it hooked up, and even without the choke, it should start. At least it should choke off or cough or do something. If we can get this thing running, that's going to be awesome. So I'm going to finish my little break here, and when we come back, we are going to get the antifreeze in it and see if this thing will start. So it is the next day, and a few minutes ago in this video, I probably said we had a few wires to hook up to get this thing so that we could crank it over and start it, and that we would have it running by the end of this video. I think all of that is still going to hold true, but let's take a look and see what we got to do now to make that happen. So as I mentioned, we got a couple of wires coming out of this box here, which is red and green and black. Something to do with the choke, I believe, or ignition. And then we've got to find out which of these wires here is your positive for the coil. And in order to do that, we've got to get the battery hooked up. So we've got our battery cables installed and connected to the starter. And we've got the Yugo battery over here on charge. I trickle charged that overnight, and it wasn't too bad anyway. So we're going to take this over and set this in the car. Hook up the battery cables, make sure there's no smoke. And because we cut the old battery tray out, I got that block of wood kind of holding it in place for now. So we're just going to set that in there. Hook up our negative. And connect our positive. I heard some dinging on the inside. So let's make sure. Oh yeah, that's telling us the keys are in the ignition. So these things will start without the clutch. So let's make sure she's in neutral. Oh, bad connection on the bad connection. I know it is because I don't have these things tight. There we go. All right. Let's try this again. Just make sure we're straight, making sure it turns over. Everything's connected. Lights come on the dash. Oh yeah. So once we figure out what positive is and what negative is, and I'm thinking I should be able to turn the key on with my multimeter, come over here and test those wires to see which one is positive. That'll go on the positive side of the coil, I think. And we'll do the same, and we'll connect the negative and just see if we get spark at the spark plugs. Then we should be able to turn this thing over. So we've got our TESMEN smart multimeter here. And what makes this thing smart is that when you turn it on, it will automatically detect impedance, AC or DC. You can actually do non-contact with it as well to find out if you've got current somewhere, but we're going to use this and see if we can get power to one of these wires. So that blue wire is our 12 volt, and the other one is, and I'll see it's automatically switched to impedance, so it's showing 46 ohms, 46K ohms. So this is our positive. We'll hook that up to positive. Now these ones here, I have no friggin' idea what's what. So we're gonna stick this, I'll stick that ground down here and see if I can do this with one hand. That's showing impedance on the green wire. And same thing with that one. I have no idea what these are for. I'm gonna have to look that up right quick before we go too much further, because it is something to do with the ignition. It is connected to the distributor, so somehow it's got to get a signal to the coil. Anyways, I'm gonna go look that up. When I come back, I'll tell you what I found out. Anyways, if you guys want one of these TESMEN smart multimeters, I'm gonna leave a link down in the description box below. So according to my service manual, the blue with black and the red go to the ignition module on the positive side. And there's two blue and blacks, according to that. But this one here is only showing one blue and black with a terminal, and there's your red. And then the other ones that we've got over here are violet and black, or black, purple and black, and a green one. So if I go here, it says the green one goes to the electronic module, so that's gonna be your negative. And when I come back to the actual ignition side of things, here is it's telling me light blue and black, red and green. There's nothing on that coil anywhere showing those two purple wires. Although they've got the same type of terminal end on them as everything else. Does that go to the black? I don't want to take a chance and blow up my coil. So I'm gonna do a little bit more research and see what we can find in this service manual. Okay, so Alan to the rescue again. He says yes, those two wires connect to the negative side. We've got that grounded, we've got the green connected, as well as our red and light blue and black. So once we get the coil connected, in theory, we should be able to crank on this thing and get something to happen. So let's try it. So one thing we got to remember is that this thing has zero exhaust on it. So at least if it coughs, then we know we got something right. Come on. There's a strong battery. All right, so we're getting nothing, not even a choke. So I'm wondering if we have a spark. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna see if we can record a spark. I'm gonna record that and you guys tell me if that's flashing. And that's on 3 cylinders.
Woo, we did it.
Well, I guess we've got spark. So we got spark and no exhaust. So we've got to get the exhaust on there. We know the thing will run. So let's get that spark plug back into play and see if we can button this thing up. All right, so we've got the exhaust on. We've got our return line switch because when I was running it, gas was kind of puking out here a little bit. And this was leaking with the original hose snap on there. So I took that off, put a new one on. And I think we should be ready to start this thing up now and be a little bit quieter. So let's see what happens. No more leaks there. We are leaking something over here. Yeah, I guess I forgot to put a clamp on that because we got two hoses there, only one's got a clamp on it, so we were puking out that a little bit. So we'll get that fixed up. It sounds good. I think we've got a little bit of an exhaust leak back here. Maybe it's something to do with the EGR because I did cut something off that. But it runs. We got some vacuums off here. Something not going on there. That's not plugged off. That's not plugged off. But hey, it runs. And once I get this fuel leak fixed up, I'm going to put the tires on it, get it off the jack stands. That way I can open up the garage door. We'll let it come up to temperature. Make sure that thermostat's going to open up and make sure that this coolant fan's going to come on, because we've got to make sure we've got that hooked up down at the bottom. And then it's just a matter of tidying up. You know, clean up all the wiring, get the headlights, the grill in, get the hood on, and this thing should be ready for sale. So if you've stuck through it this long and you've enjoyed this part of getting the Yugo running, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. It tells YouTube I'm doing a good job, and hopefully we'll push it out as a recommended to folks out there who want to see some of this content. Anyways, also, if you're not subscribed, now's the time to do that too. Hit that red subscribe button and make sure you turn the bell notifications on so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Anyways, let's get that leak fixed up and hopefully get this thing down on the ground. And maybe even, oh, we're gonna put transmission fluid in it too. Can't forget that. Well, thermostat's opened up. We've got some flow, water pump is pumping. And it was just gurgling over there a little bit. That's why there's some steam. The fan's not coming on yet, but I think it's because it's not getting hot enough. I gotta figure that out. But other than that, I'm pretty pumped. This thing is running again for the first time in, well, probably a year. Been sitting around doing nothing, but anyways, it's finally running. We got a few little things. I thought I was gonna go take it for a drive today, but guess what? No brakes and no transmission fluid. So we're gonna get that stuff fixed up. We'll get this thing down on all fours once we get our part for our brakes, get the brakes bled, and top up our transmission fluid. Then we take it for a rip around the yard. Guys, thank you so much for sticking through this long on this video. Stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. I love you guys. God bless. Let's do it again real soon.